All right, so tonight we have the professional artist, Lisa Langell, who uses her extraordinary creative skills to share with all of us her unfettered love of nature in all its forms. A nature photographer and birder from the age of 8, Lisa is the founder of Langell Photography, and she put her email address, or yeah, I think that's, oh, it's actually her
It's
presence on the internet.
yes.
And sorry.
It's okay.
She started her business in 2010 after a long, vibrant career. She was a floral designer, an educational psychologist, as she mentioned, consultant, and in helping launch and manage 2 startups that grew into leading companies in the ed tech space. Since then, she's earned numerous awards and has been published in multiple magazines. She is an image master for Tamron and an ambassador for PhotoPro and is a judge for ViewBug. Lisa loves creating nature photography and art that is inspired by her background in psychology and design. When Lisa is having fun taking and making photographs, or isn't having fun taking, taking and making photographs, she's thriving on teaching photography, as she mentioned, most often in Alaska. Her humility and passion for both shines through in how she provides memorable, fun, and educational experiences that enrich, invigorate, and expand photographers' minds in wonderful ways. Lisa leads numerous trips to many fabulous places and often teaches during these great adventures. What a privilege it would be to spend some of your photo-dedicated time like that. But tonight we are with Lisa locally on our computers through our Zoom app, and she will share her insights and experience from years of mastering her craft as she reviews our images and helps us see them with a more critical eye. But before we proceed, I want to review our procedure for tonight. Lisa will be sharing her desktop to display and discuss your images. During the critiques, please place your questions or comments in the chat. If they are specific to her current review, she may choose to answer it then, but otherwise she will address them at the end of the critique during our question and answer time. When the critique begins, we will turn off everyone's sound so we don't accidentally hear any uncensored conversations. And we would appreciate it if you would all turn off your video, which can also be a distraction, as well as affect possibly the bandwidth, I've told. So it's presentation time, and I will hand over the Zoom stage to the talented professional artist and photographer, Lisa Langell. So Lisa, the stage is yours.
All right. Thanks so much, Nancy. And by the way, thanks to Nancy and Mary for coordinating all of this. I know it's been some juggle back and forth, and I've been unavailable a lot because of travel and other things. So just thanks for working on this. And I'm excited to do this tonight for all of you. Just a couple quick things too. How I like to do critiques, I think it's important for you to know that I, first of all, know how scary it can be to submit an image for critique. Guess what? I still get nervous too. And I think yet at the same token, it's really important because the feedback is something you can take, accept. You can say, yes, I agree, or no, I don't. And who cares? This is your feedback for you. But I think it's important that you continually get feedback on your images and also take a look at the whole group of feedback that you're getting because you really want to see the trends in the data. It's not just one picture, that makes you a great photographer or not. It's over and over and over again. Are you improving or not? Or, do you have good quality images or not? And that is a very subjective thing. So I like to look at a body of work. And of course, we're not doing that tonight. I'm looking at, one image or so, maybe 2 or 3 from each person. But I think getting that feedback on your body of work from multiple different reviewers is helpful because you can sift through the occasional great or poor comment and really see kind of what's standing out as a kind of a recurring theme. Second of all, I never, ever intend ever to insult anyone or dress anyone down online or make you feel bad. I know there are some reviewers out there, and I've heard them. I heard one recently where this one specific reviewer literally told me he was reviewing like this, a group of images for a camera club. And he's like, I just told him this was a train wreck. Or no, it was a dumpster fire. That was his exact words. And I was appalled at that because you are having people who are bringing in their very best work from what they can do right now with where they're at with their camera, their skills, how long they've been doing photography, and also the time that you have to get out to some of these places and shoot. I'm very aware of that. And so I never want someone to feel bad for what you're bringing to me. But what I do want to do is tell you what I love about it, give you potentially some ideas that if you go out again in the future, this might be something to look for. And possibly in post-processing, here's a little couple tweaks you could do to make that image better. And I may even do that with a couple of images tonight. I don't want to spend all night on that, but just to show you, hey, you could make this to go from a 7 to a 10 by just tweaking these couple of things. And most of all, I want you to continue to learn and grow. And as I'm critiquing something, if you have questions in the chat window, I will be more than happy to answer those as we go along. So I won't be asking everyone to tell me about the image before I review it, just because we're in kind of a time-sensitive nature today. But if there's something important I should know, feel free and type it in the comments. But I look forward to this. I've taken a sneak peek at your images. They're really beautiful. And I had to chuckle because I looked at all of the images real quick when they were downloading, and I noticed there were a number of birds that had crossed bills, not deformities, but they were interacting and they had crossed bills. And my first glance was, oh, they created a theme, or this was the content, or this was the theme for the month. And then I realized it's not the theme for the month, but there were some coincidences there. So that was just cool. It was a fun little observation. All right, I'm going to share my screen, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to use Photoshop to display these images. It just allows me to zoom in and out quickly and for you to be able to see everything that I want to talk about. And I'm going to just go one by one for there's no particular order here, just we'll go through. We have 37 images and I will do my best to get started with those. I love that you photographed a bittern, and this was one of my nemesis birds for a really, really long time. And you got it out in the open, not hiding behind 74 pieces of grass and weeds. So nice job on that. Your lighting is beautiful. This image has like nice color to it with the beautiful greens, and and you can see the detail of where it's walking. I love this little bit of gesture with the foot up. So often I gripe, it's just another bird standing there, and I try to avoid that as much as I can, just getting a bird standing there. So this little gesture just helps the whole image. You've got the eye in focus, all of the shutter speed seems to be appropriate to freeze the action in that bird. All of those things are excellent. You've got the light on the right side. Here's what I think could help your image. A lot of times when we are composing, we'll use something like the rule of thirds. And I'm just going to pull that up a little bit. You do have the face kind of in the rule of thirds, so that is good. But the bird ends up being more in the center of the picture. And I'm wondering if we couldn't I'm going to play with this a little bit. I have not touched any of these images other than just took a quick glance at them today. But if we did something like this, and brought some of that detail kind of more filling the frame in your picture, it may help. So if we cropped it like that, it brings this bird a little bit over more to the left, and then it feels like that bird has a little bit more room to walk, even though we've got some grasses here ahead of itself. If you did something like more of a square-ish crop, it would eliminate this, but I feel like that is very static. It looks like a field guide picture now. So I think leaving some of that in is better. And then what I would do, I'm not going to edit every picture, but what I would do in post-processing is I would leave this as it is, and I would tone this down a little bit. And there's a variety of ways to do it. I don't know how much this person likes to post-process or not, so I'll try to keep it simple. And you can always watch the recording again to see how I did this, but I'll try to quickly explain. I am in Camera Raw, which is similar to Lightroom. Camera Raw was the kind of underpinnings of Lightroom. Lightroom evolved from Camera Raw, and Camera Raw still basically does everything. It just doesn't do the cataloging. So I'm going to go and grab my brush tool, or it's a mask tool, but I kind of think of it more like a brush. And I am going to click the brush option. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull highlights down and start painting. And that's going to tone down these highlights in here a little bit. And that's going to lead my eye gradually away from that and we can play with it a little bit more. I can do another layer with another brush and pull just the exposure down. Whoops. Oh, that's fine. Pull the exposure down a little bit. I could even pull the contrast down and do that again, another coat, so to speak. And I'm doing this quickly. You can fine tune it more yourself. And we can even pull down some of this over here to kind of lead my eye away from those things and keep it more towards the bird. So you can even create a little more subject separation from the background by doing that. And I think those kinds of things may just help a little bit keep my eye more interested in the bird, and all these other things become more subtle. So I'll just show you a quick before and after, but there's the before. Let me zoom that in a little bit more so you can see it. There's the after. So some of those things might just help your image a little bit more and give your eye a little relief and draw it more towards the bird. I love your subject. I love the sharpness, the focus, the fact that you even saw one. And these are just a few little tips that I think will help. I hope that helps for you, but type if you have any questions in the chat window, and I will be keeping an eye. I'm looking over to the left because I have a separate monitor for the chat window, but I will be keeping an eye on that as well. All right, so let me get the next picture going here. All right. We've got an owl taking off in flight it looks like in the swamp with the Spanish, or not, yeah, Spanish moss. I don't know why I was going to think sphagnum moss. That's totally different. First of all, I love the action that you're trying to capture here, the wingspan, the bird taking off. I can appreciate so much the patience that it takes to get a bird taking off. And in this case, it's a little owlet. So you were probably waiting for it to maybe fledge. And so I love that quite a bit. One of the challenges with this, two things, keeping your shutter speed high enough to capture that movement. And I actually don't mind a little bit of the wing blur in here because it shows movement. The freezing of the wings is something that many photographers place a lot of importance on. And I think it's more personal taste. Do you want to imply the motion like this does, or do you want to freeze the motion where everything's tack sharp? In either case, and I'm going to see if we can look up the metadata here, if it came up with the image. Let's see. Camera data. Nope, I don't think it showed up in here for whatever reason. So you could try a higher shutter speed, but the problem is still going to be you're in a darker area, as you can tell from this picture, and getting that shutter speed up without having a lot of noise from your ISO then also going up can be a challenge. The other thing, and this is one of the things that cameras do to us that frustrates me. The other thing is that this is really dark in relationship to the sky. And if you were to be able to tell your camera, hey, the sky is much brighter than my subject, please don't expose so the sky is gray and my subject is dark. Unfortunately, it doesn't know. So it just takes the picture and kind of takes an average of all of the light that's coming into the camera and guesses. And so when we're exposing for something like this, where you have a subject that is much darker than your background, you're going to want to overexpose your image so that the subject is bright, and who cares if the sky goes pure white. So I'm going to kind of do this in post, although it's not going to look quite right because this being so dark, it will lose detail as I lift the exposure. But you can try to see what I'm saying if I pull up this exposure much brighter so that this bird looks more properly exposed. Of course, it's not going to look that great when I do it this much because there's not very much data in these pixels when they're black or nearly black. You really need midtones to make that data stand out a little bit more and allow for some of that post-processing. So those are just some things that are hard-earned lessons with photography. But if you're standing there while the bird's not doing something, you could play with your exposure and try to overexpose and take some test shots and see what that looks like. I hope that's helpful. Of course, we could delve into that a lot more, and I know we only have so much time, but good job on capturing a bird doing something interesting, finding this owl apparently, fledging for maybe the first time. And I like the wing position. We did clip the bird a little bit on the top here. It would be nice if it was fuller in the frame, but I realize it's also a huge challenge. And I love the background that it's in. I just think overexposure would help a lot. Even if you practice on leaves, just walk into the forest and find some leaves against a white sky and practice overexposing with that. That'll give you some good habits for the future. I really appreciate you submitting that. All right, let me get out of here and we'll go pull up the next image. And again, I appreciate everyone submitting these images. It's hard to kind of put yourself out there and have someone else review your work. And I never think anybody is a bad photographer. We're just all in the process of learning. We're all on this journey together. There are things I won't shoot very well because I don't know how to shoot them, like deep spaced astro. That's a whole other genre of photography that I don't do. I mean, I can do Milky Way and all those kinds of things, but I wouldn't know the first thing about deep space astro. So we're all new at something, and I respect that. I appreciate that you're out there doing something. There's a lot of people that don't. These owls, again, some of my favorite things. I just love barred owls. They're awesome animals. So similar here, and I didn't look to see if this. I don't know that this is the same person because the names didn't come with the pictures. So this is completely unbiased judge. But it may be that you saw these birds and these were two different submissions. I don't know. But kind of a similar issue. We've got the white sky. The thing, it's less of a problem because more of your pixels, if you will, in your picture are filled up with darker subjects. So the camera will by nature brighten it up a little bit more, but we still have some darkness here. And you will always have more detail and more data in your picture if it's a little bit overexposed as opposed to a little bit underexposed. When it's dark like this, in those pixels, you can't see feather detail, even if you lightened it up. You can't see all that little stuff. Whereas if the picture's a little bit brighter, you can see it. To a point, you can darken a bright picture, but you can't brighten a darker picture very much without having some side effects. But let's go look at it here real quickly. I will try to do my best and see if we can fix this a little bit. So I'm going to just pull up the shadows here and see how you can start to get a little bit more detail. And then let's see what happens if I just brighten the whole thing. We start to get more detail there. So if you can do that in camera, you will have sharper results than what you're able to see here. It'll look a little bit nicer. So see if you can look into either manual exposure or using the exposure compensation tools in your camera. That will help immensely. And Nancy or Mary, if you want, I would be more than happy. I have 2 tutorials on manual settings. I'd be glad to share them with you for free. I normally don't, but if it would be helpful to this group, I'd be more than happy to do so because I want to see you learn and grow. So I'll send you those links after this webinar.
Thank you. That's awesome.
Yeah, but I have to say, despite the exposure issues here, what a lovely composition and what a lovely story. The parents bringing in food. I don't know what this is. Looks like maybe fish. And I can't imagine it's fish, but I don't know, something interesting there. And you can see the little morsel in the bill. And this little guy's like, come on, is it my turn yet? I mean, this tells a wonderful story. And I absolutely adore how you framed this with these leaves. It's just beautiful. It's a hard shot to get. I can tell that just by looking at this, that getting them all where one's face isn't covered up by a leaf and, getting there to see everything, finding that one little opening difficult. But you did a really nice job, and it tells a lovely story. These birds up in the trees feeding. You can see all their faces, which that's another thing that's hard, is just getting all the babies to look in some direction that the camera can see the face. So I just applaud that so much. I think that is excellent. So nice job on that. All right. And before I go, whoops, I already shut that out. Darn it, I was going to show the before and after again, but I closed it out. And all right, and I see some comments in the chat room. Thank you for that. So I see with the bidder, and I would have done the position as you did. This is from Lawrence. Maybe could crop tighter in the rectangle to remove the rat's nest on the right. possibly drop exposure a bit on the bittern. Yep. I do agree with that. And then, oh, these are feedback from other people. So you know what, I am not going to read all of that out loud. You guys can see that there wasn't a question directly for me. So, all right. So let me go to the next image here. So we're moving along here. This this is such an interesting image. It's like a visual like trick.
Puzzle.
Um, yeah, it's really interesting. We've got the two wood storks here, and the one guy, it's almost like we have a like Siamese twins, right? But it's really interesting. Your lighting is great on this. Nothing seems overexposed, but yet you have these two birds right on top of each other. So it really is as being a really good image to use for a caption contest or a titling contest with that. But I really love it. You've got patch lights in the eyes, which that is a hard thing to do when um, you have two different birds, you have sun at certain angles. A lot of times people will go and put a white dot in there and I don't know if this was the case or not, but you can tell that there is reflection in these birds' eyes, and it does look like there's a little sun reflection there. This is something that I always look for to make sure that we can see highlights in the eyes or catch lights in the eyes, because not only does it give life to the image, it tells me that your lighting direction is appropriate for the position of the head. If you don't position the head appropriately, you have a lot of problems with the lighting, and therefore you won't get the catch light in the eye. It'll just be this dark space. And if you put drops of light in the eye, like one little white dot here or there, without some of this reflection showing, it tends to lead me to question if it's a fake eye. So anyway, I really like this. I think this is a really interesting shot just as is. Again, your exposure is really nice. If I were to play with it in post-processing, I would add a blank layer, and then I would change in Photoshop this blending mode to overlay. I've got white paint and a paintbrush, and I am going to zoom in, and you could even highlight these eyes a little bit more and perhaps give them a little more depth. And also you could, whoops, I hit the wrong button. You could go in and you could brighten up a little bit of that eyelid. Now, I don't want to change the species because we'd have a, white-eyed wood stork. I'm not trying to do that, but bringing in a little extra highlight sometimes can help, especially on these birds with dark faces, can sometimes help draw my eye into that bird. So I'm doing this very quickly. You could spend, obviously much more time on it, but I just want to kind of give you a quick before and after of how that would look. And we can do the same thing by adding darker detail to it as well. So I use this overlay layer because it tends to be a little gentler than dodge and burn if anybody uses dodge and burn for post-processing. But let's just take a quick look at the results. So there's the before and there's the after. See how those eyes just get punched up a little bit more in the tissue around them, so that when I'm viewing the image, it allows me to just get in that face a little bit easier. And you could even play it up a little bit more. Be careful you don't do it too much. But I love this composition. It's a very interesting picture and well done. It's sharp in all the right places and the lighting is great. So nice job. Okay. Oh, beautiful. Florida is such a great place for butterflies. I love this. It's like looking out into the beyond. Like, where am I going? What's out there? Love the detail in the ferns and the spores underneath here. It's so pretty. It just adds a little extra something to look at. And it mimics the eye in, well, not the actual eye, but the eye markings in the butterfly itself. So I really like that. Kind of draws my eye in a little bit more to that. Your background is stunning. It's enough of a hint to know that there's something there, but it's blurry enough that it's not distracting to me. So I love that texture. It's just the right amount of detail where I can tell what it is, but it's not confusing me as to where I should look. I like that you can see the legs in here and all four of them you can see in detail. So that positioning that you're in for this picture is really nice. Part of me wishes I could see the eye a little bit more, but I know that it's there. It's just the aft end of a butterfly, and I wish like it was a little bit more of a side profile picture to engage me with the face a little bit more. But I do think it's a lovely picture because I can see the wings, I can see all this detail, I understand where it is, and it's kind of looking onward, like where do I go from here? I like also your cropping. I think it's a nice way to crop this as this wider aspect ratio crop. Some people stay, often with the 8:10 or 8:12 aspect ratio. And I almost always, if it looks right, prefer a wider aspect ratio crop. So I really appreciate that. If there's one little thing that I would do is I would probably just either crop this just a tiny bit to get rid of that leaf or go in with your spot healing brush or something like that and just clean that up a little bit because it's just a little tiny distracting thing. It's not the end of the world, but that would be something that I personally think you might want to try. But other than that, I do think it's beautiful. If we could, the only little thing is if I could see the eye, or if you have a sister image like it where the eye is a little bit more apparent, that would be something that would help it. But nicely done. Okay. This is something. Um, this bird, I am always amazed at how these birds can swim underwater and catch these fish. I mean, we can't do it with a hook and a piece of bait and a boat and all this expensive gear, and they just do it like it's nothing. Um, Really nice capture, by the way. I like that you've frozen the little water droplets in here are frozen quite nicely, so your shutter speed is pretty high in order to get there. And again, I don't know if the shutter speed is showing here. Yes, 1/800th of a second, f4, ISO 400. I agree with all of those settings. I think that was a smart choice, and you caught the fish. Um, if you have the original on this, what I would suggest, and I'm going to try to show it to you over here in Photoshop. Let me go to the luminosity. All right, so this is a histogram. Some of you may know about it, some of you may not, but a histogram is a readout of the data in your picture. So if you counted all the pixels in here and then you sorted them out by how dark to how light each one of them is, or how many are of a certain color, you can get all of these different little histograms. It's just a visual representation of your picture in kind of data in a bar graph form. So you can see luminosity is how much light comes through the image. And there's not a lot of darks, right? Very few. There's this here. There is not a ton of really bright light. There's a little bit this here, and there's a lot kind of in the middle, which is good. I wouldn't want anything too far to the left or too far to the right. So overall, this is good. My one little concern, and you might have a larger file where you could check this out a little bit more closely, but hold on, let me zoom in here a little bit. I don't know why it's not allowing me to do that. Um, there we go. This here is really close to white. And I know that's because the fish is opalescent colored and their bellies are white. I've seen these fish before. But if you could maybe slightly tone that down a little bit more. If I do it, it's going to look milky because this is a low res JPEG, type image. But if you have the original file, see if you can just pull that back a little bit. You might get more richness in color, and that might help you a little bit. But other than that, I really like it. If you were to do anything else, I might just take this and crop it a little bit more. And you want to give a little room for that bird to move with the fish. But I think something like that could be a little bit easier on the eye, like the all of the extra water in this case doesn't really add to the story much. I really want to see what's right in here. So if we could crop something like that, I think that would be helpful. Maybe leave a little bit more room behind the tail because you barely get those water droplets. And if you were to print this, you would probably have a little bit of bleed and it would cut those things potentially off. But those are my only suggestions. I mean, your eye is nice and sharp, the bird is nice and sharp. It's a neat image and it tells a great story. I don't know how they even swallow those things. They're so big, but nicely done. All right. Oh, this is adorable. Somebody was, I'm going to guess, in Australia or somewhere with one of these wonderful birds. I don't know where this was, but I would be curious if you told me in the chat comments. But I'm going to think it's maybe a kookaburra. It's some kind of kingfisher, and certainly isn't a belted kingfisher unless they all of a sudden got much bigger bills and a little different feathers. But first of all, I like that you've isolated it. I love your background, how pretty and colorful that is. I think that's really, really nice. It's sharp where it needs to be. You didn't miss the focus. I think this bird, given where it's probably taken, was probably, you can tell just by the light on an overcast day. So, or it was in shade. It might have been a sunny day, but it was, underneath a tree in shade, what have you. So I think again, if you went into post-processing and lifted those colors a little bit, it would jump off the page a little bit more. If I just lift exposure, it brightens everything up, which isn't necessarily horrible. But if I start pulling up shadows a little bit, it starts to brighten that bird up a little bit more. And then I could try the contrast to kind of bring back some of those darker pieces of the bird. The other thing is when things are shot in shade, they tend to get a little blue. And so I will show you as an example here. Let me go back to the original for a second. I'm going to take my paint dropper and I am going to sample colors of white in here. And I'm assuming this is gray and white. But if you see what colors, look at the little dot in this box. Every time I pick something, it shows up in the blue. And that's because this was shot in shade. If you want to correct for that and have it be more true to color than have this blue tone because it was shot in the shade, then we need to do that. And one of the ways that we can do that, I can go to Camera Raw or Lightroom or Photoshop. There's a bunch of different ways you can correct for it. But I could go to this white balance under color, click my paint dropper here, and just select something that I think should be white. And look at how much that warms that up and brings some of the color back. And if it did it too much to your taste, then you can take this temperature slider and just dial it back a little bit. But that tends to correct for some of those blue tints that we get in our pictures of birds in shade. Especially you'll see that a lot in white birds, light gray birds, even blue birds become very blue. And I mean anything with a blue tint to it, not necessarily bluebirds, but that can help quite a bit. And then you can work on anything else you might want to adjust with, contrast or whatnot. So that's just my suggestion on that. Let's play with the contrast a little bit more. It just makes that bird jump out. The other thing, and I'm not sure why it's happening, could be a variety of reasons, but you'll see this little halo here around the bird. And we saw it quite a bit when I had the original darker version of the bird. You can see that halo. Often that's due to some quirks with post-processing, where maybe something was selected and lightened or some treatment was done to the image. So just be careful of that. If you're post-processing and you see those halos develop, probably need to fix that some way. But that aside, let's look at the one with just a little bit of brightness. I think it looks much better. That aside, it's a beautiful image of this bird. The bird's beautiful. I love your background, so colorful. Nice job on that. Your focus is great. The sharpness is great. I like everything about that. I just think it could use a little help in post-processing, but nicely done. All right, I'm going to go to the next one. All right. This little hummingbird is gorgeous. I love hummingbirds, as you know. I like the coloring. I like your lighting on it. The background is not very distracting. There's a few little things, but it's not too bad. Couple things that I would say is your camera hit focus on the wings back here. Your camera probably was, and it could be a variety of things, but one really common one is people let the camera pick the thing it's focusing on. So you kind of aim and focus and shoot, and it picks the thing closest to the lens, which are these wings. That isn't always the case, and people sometimes do other things with focus, but I'm guessing that could be the case. And then therefore, these wings are probably maybe a half inch closer to the camera, maybe more than the face. And so the face ends up being a little bit blurry, but the wings are sharp. If you can learn how to move, and if you already know how to do this and just missed focus, I apologize. But if you can, learn how to adjust your focus settings so that you can move them around the frame and put that focus right on that eye and then take the picture. And I realize all of this is hard. Birds move. I get all of that. But it's something to work towards so you can nail the focus, because the depth of field is different between this wing here and this eye. Like I said, probably a half inch, maybe more. But that can be the difference between out of focus and in focus. And the eye is the most important thing. If the eye is not in focus, nothing else matters. We really want to connect with that eye, and the more in focus it can be, the better. There are some post-processing tools that might be able to correct for that, like Topaz, Sharpen, and even the AI tools now. So you could try to run it through that and see if it can correct for that. But that would be my only suggestion on technique here. And the other thing is this little bright spots here on the edge of your image. If you can tone those down, that helps quite a bit. So for example, if I just take a couple of these and I am just darkening them, it just might help tone them down. And sometimes darkening can add other color effects. So you'll have to try a few different tools to see which ones you like best. Or if you don't mind, you can use the spot healing tool in Photoshop, and Lightroom has something similar, and it will just, sometimes you got to do it 2 or 3 times, but it will get rid of some of those little spots, because on the edges, boy, that's doing a terrible job of it this time. I don't know why. I'll try clone instead. But if you can get rid of some of those little spots, it can really help improve your image. So let's do that instead. And that can help maybe tone this one down a little bit too. Get rid of this little guy here. But those little techniques will be helpful as you move forward. But I like your lighting on the bird. I like everything. I love the diagonal stick. And I would say the only thing you need to work on is the sharpness and putting your focus point in the right place. And then just slightly clean up the background. Nice job. All right. Flamingo. Or no, ibis, red eye, scarlet ibis. Very cool. That's what I get for guessing when I'm looking at a tiny thumbnail on my other screen. Really cool that you've seen these birds. This is one that's definitely on my bucket list for someday in the future. I really like that you caught this bird, like looking at the water in the background. Let me get my pointer, but the nice water in the background coming through, water here, like it just adds to the interest of the picture. Very well done with that regard. I like the way you framed up the bird. I think the square or square-ish crop is the way to go for, just a bird with not much else on either side that we need to pull into the frame. I like that you just centered this bird and did a square crop. Square crops often work very well with things that are centered in the frame. I think something that could be helpful, and there's not a whole lot you could do in camera to bring this out, because if your exposure was any brighter, you would lose this altogether. You wouldn't have any detail. I'm looking at my luminosity here in the histogram, and on the right-hand side, we're not quite clipping, which means this white goes all the way to the right here. We're not doing that, but we did a little bit in this picture, clip some of the other things. We have green, oddly, that is clipped. And I don't see any green here, so I'm really surprised that that is showing up as clipped. I'm not sure why. The red, oh, sorry, that's not green. That is red. I was like, this doesn't make sense. I was reading it wrong. The red is clipped. And what that means, you see how this looks like peach instead of this bright, vibrant red? What that means is that the reds got so exposed, even overexposed a little bit, that the reds turned orange and they ended up being clipped, meaning there's not much detail left. So, and I know this is a JPEG version of this, so we're going to see some pixeling, but when it's a little darker, you're going to see a lot more feather detail. This would be true. A lot of people photograph, a rose outside in the middle of the day, beautiful rose. And like, how come it looks orange? It was a red rose. Well, when it gets so bright, it tends to lose the detail. It becomes oversaturated. And that's not because you slid a slider in post-processing. That is just the nature of the light and when we get really bright light. So what I would suggest perhaps is even underexposing a little bit. However, with your light being top down, so this was shot ballpark in the middle of the day. How can I tell? Because I can see, first of all, there's no shadows for the legs or anything else. There's no shadows. If you had later in the day, there'd be shadows coming in some direction or another. There's top light here, top light here, top light on the legs, and this face is in shadow. This is in shadow from the face shadowing the front of the neck. So all the light's coming from above. That is difficult to get that face lightened up. If the bird were to turn its head a certain way, you might like a little bit more towards us. You may get a little brighter light in the eye. And so this looks underexposed and this looks overexposed, and that's just the quality of the light for that day. Probably full sun, middle of the day. If I underexposed it, so if I went, I'll just play with exposure here real quick. Where's my exposure? There it is. If I underexposed it, you'll see reds coming back in a little bit more. Look at how my red channel is now slid over. It's not clipped, but once it's all the way over to the right, you do lose that detail. So I would just like, I know a bird is only there when it's there, and you're only there when you're there, and there's only so much time. But as a general rule, in the future, if you can watch your lighting and not shoot as much middle of the daylight if possible, I know it's hard. And I would also just watch your exposure so you don't overexpose anything. And then in post-processing, we can try to lift that face a little bit using some of the techniques I showed in the earlier images. But there may not be enough detail to make it look amazing, but you might be able to get a little brighter. Those are my suggestions, and I hope that's helpful for you because I can really appreciate photographing the scarlet ibis, and there's a lot of things you did really well here. All right. Oh, this is so darling. I just love this. This is so cute. By the way, again, like those owls that we saw earlier, great framing. Peeking through the leaves, I know this is a hard shot to get, but that little creep out of the leaves into the light is so precious. And it really does tell me a story about this bird is in the forest or wherever it's at, um, in the low-lying deep dark place. I'm assuming it's in a forest, but I don't know where you shot it. This is really cool. And I love that it's kind of coming out from its environment. And these leaves are so blurred out that they're not distracting. It just sort of gives this soft frame. If there was a lot of leaves and it was really cluttery, it would be less pleasing to the eye, in my opinion, but I really love it. I think your sharpness is exquisite. I'm going to zoom in here. You can see how sharp that eye is, how detailed these feathers are. That's because you have the right amount of light here. It's side lit, meaning that the light is coming from the your right shoulder into the bird, and that's gorgeous. I mean, that is perfect exposure in there. And then, of course, he's back in the shadows here. I think that's an excellent, excellent image. If I were to try anything with it, I would maybe just tone this little area down because my eye goes right back to it. And that's probably a relatively easy thing to do. Let's see if we can do it quickly. And then I think we might have it conquered here. So if I go to my brush tool and I pull my highlights down and I go in here a little bit, let's try a little on the exposure. I don't want to do it too much or you'll start to get a weird ring. Let's see if we change the contrast in here and then pull that down. That's a little bit better. Maybe do it one more time with a new brush. And I am just going to pull exposure down at this point and do a smaller area. And if we do that, and again, I'm doing a 2-second edit. You can spend longer and do it more quickly. But see how that just keeps my eye from wandering up here and going, all right, you got me up here. What do I do now? Light draws your eyes to things. When you have a lot of bright things, it draws your eye. The other thing you might want to consider is toning this down a little bit, not a lot, just a little bit, because the emphasis is really here. And then I should be seeing all this. And right now they kind of compete with each other. Those are my thoughts, but an excellent, excellent, cool image. I really enjoy this one. All right. Next. Oh, this is cool. What a beautiful dragonfly. The color is exquisite. I love it. And I don't know what it is about dragonflies, but they love the ends of sticks. Like 99 times out of 100, a dragonfly picture will be at the end of a stick when you photograph it. I love this color. I love how you kind of come in and go up. It's simple. Your background's clean. Everything looks really, really nice. Your wings are in focus. I mean, look at that. That is beautiful. Really nicely done. I personally really enjoy this. And this is a tough one. Here's the reds again. And this could easily get blown out. But if I look at my red channel over here, we are right at the tippy edge, but not oversaturating that, blowing out those highlights. And I look at my luminosity and we are right there, but we are not over. And that is very challenging to do. And you did a really, really nice job of it. Um, I don't know that I really have a lot to add to this one. I think it's very lovely. I think if you did too much of a vignette, like toning down the background anymore, it would look artificial. Um, I think it's really nice the way it is. I think you did a really nice job with a tricky subject to capture. Good job. All right. Oh, what beautiful, beautiful duck and exquisite water. Like me, I love abstracts. I could sit in here and like just photograph this water. Look at how stunning that water is. Beautiful. I love, love, love how you have the duck right in the brightest part of this water. I don't know what's reflecting behind it, a building or a sign, or I don't know, but whatever it is like you pick the exact right spot because the brighter things and then you have the contrast with the duck really makes it work. If you were to have the duck over here, it's not that it wouldn't work, but if you had like if the duck was over here and the whiter stuff was at the edge of your image, it would really compete for my attention. This is like dead center gorgeous. And one of those examples where I do think, even though the duck is centered, that your choice in crop works. And I truly I
Mm,
could do abstracts in this all day long. Like this is luscious to look at. I mean, your
yeah.
duck is gorgeous. That's a given. Sharp where it needs to be, proper exposure, not too bright, still details in those things. But that water, oh, it's so pretty. I mean, I'm not kidding when I say go take your picture, go cut some of these out, make some abstracts out of them, maybe use gigapixel if you need to enlarge them for the size, but those are just as pretty. I adore that. That is a beautiful image. If there were anything maybe that I would do is I would try to tone this down back here a little bit. And I don't think it needs a ton, but that left side, especially kind of, there's my duck, but this is over here shouting at me for attention. So if we can try to keep the attention on the duck and just pull down the exposure a little bit, I'm going to try to slide that exposure down, pull highlights down. Let's see what we get. I think that could just draw in my attention more towards the duck. And you can do this to taste if you want to, but I think that would help it immensely and just give you an even more beautiful emphasis on that duck. So that's a quick edit, but you can see the difference here. And again, you can do it better when I'm not trying to do it quickly. But see how that leaves my attention on the duck and my eye isn't kind of coaxed over into that corner? I think that is just gorgeous. Beautiful job. Nicely done. All right. Oh, wow. What an interesting, I got to look at this for a minute. What a really interesting position. You must have been on a footbridge or something looking down on this little guy. This is really interesting. I love it. I think it's so cool. A very different pose from what I'm used to, which is Heron standing there most of the time. I think this is very cool. I love the way it gives you this circular feel and your eye just keeps moving around the image. You have like this perfect complete circle here. I think that is really, really cool. I like the way these sticks or reeds or whatever they are frame up the bird. I'm wondering if we couldn't tone them down just a little bit, just so they don't compete. But I really like everything that's going on here. This is a little bright, but it needs to be like it's like at first it's like, whoo, that's some pretty bright light, but I don't know how you would soften it much without changing the balance in the lights to darks and in keeping my eye moving through it. I think this is cool. Maybe you could try lightening the shadow a little bit just to kind of fade it in and not have this harsh line of demarcation. That would be a Photoshop thing that you'd want to play with and just fading that a little bit and blending that a little bit more. But I think that is a really interesting image. Very cool. It's a pretty tight crop, maybe a tad more breathing room, but it all depends and also how you're going to print it. But if you did print it, be careful that you don't lose any edges to the bleed or the canvas wrap or whatever you might choose to do with that. But very cool image. I've never seen anything like it before, and I mean that in a good way. Very cool. All right. And as I'm going along, please let me know if these comments are helpful. I'm trying to hasten the pace a little bit or you'll be here all night, but I also want to give you really helpful tools. I want this to be educational for you. So your feedback is welcome. If there's anything that I'm doing you like or don't like, let me know. What a cool picture of a catbird. This is really neat. I have never personally captured a catbird doing something so interesting before. They're hard to capture in their own right. Love. Again, similar to the last picture. I love this circular motion that you're giving me with the way the branches blend in with the bend of the bird. I mean, it's just a really cool thing. And I realize it's luck, right? You just have to be there and be ready to go when that bird does something cool. And these sticks were just there. I mean, we can't force this stuff to happen, but it's a good photographer who go out there and spend the time and find the right moments and make a catbird picture look interesting for a bird that's pretty much gray and pretty much sits there a lot or doesn't, and you can never get a good picture. But this is one of the more original pictures of a catbird I've ever seen, and I love it. I think it's beautiful. Love your catch light here. Love the side light. This is an example of a picture that was taken either earlier in the day or later in the day, but when the sun was at the photographer's back or just off their shoulder, kind of behind their shoulder. And you can tell because there's no harsh shadows on the underside. I mean, there's a little bit, but you get this nice warm light. Everything is just beautiful. The shadows here are minimal. If you had top light, this would be bright, this would be dark, and there'd be like a big dark shadow here. Really nice light, great focus, great moment. I like your crop. Maybe just give it a little more breathing room up here. You know, the little inch or so would be nice to just not have that quite so close to the edge. And if I did a really quick example here for you, is if I just expanded that a little bit, it will give this picture so much of a different look. And hold on, let me try that again. All right, so I'm using content aware fill in Photoshop, which will fill in with the background, sometimes good, sometimes not so good. That one didn't work quite right, but we'll try generative expand. Let's see how this one does. Give it a little extra room. And that's a little tip for you. If you don't mind editing in those ways your images, some people are very purist and they don't want to do that, and that's okay. But there's a lot of people in the room. I'm giving you tips for a lot of different use cases, but you'll see how that gives it a little more breathing room. And same with the bottom, but this is better. But see how that just goes, my brain literally goes, ah, that feels better. So try that. Maybe give just a skosh more room down here, but this is an awesome image. Congratulations, really nicely done. Oh, total luck. Two catbirds were chasing each other and one stopped for a moment to grab a berry. Well, nice job, Scott, on trying to capture that moment because you had to be right on the focus in order to catch that. You had to be happy when you saw that image because it's really awesome. It's a really fun one. I'm seeing some really unique things from people here, and I'm enjoying it. All right, beautiful egret here. I am in love. I have herons and egrets I love. The heron is actually my logo for my website. Herons are a bird that's been special to me since I'm a kid. So I love that. And egrets are, right up there. So this is a nice shot of him preening or her preening. I like I love this kind of figure eight motion that it's giving. Sometimes preening pictures can be awkward, but this one looks nice. I like that your bird isn't overexposed, your sky is not overexposed. If anything, in some areas, it could be a little underexposed. And guess what? Easy fix. So we could go in a couple different ways. I try to pick a couple different ways to do this in the webinar to show people, but if you went in and you grabbed your brush mask again, trying to keep it simple for you, and then you could pull up exposure just a little and maybe shadows just a little, and this will always work better on the raw image than on a JPEG that we're using. But if I just brighten that up a little, being careful not to hold on, being careful not to go outside the lines here. Let me try this again because I just hit the wrong button. And just brightening that up, I think is going to help tremendously. And it's just going to give that bird a little bit more light and life. And I want to say something too. This can be a difference in our monitors, depending on how your monitor is calibrated and perhaps how mine is. That truly could be a difference in what you see in your images when you submit them versus what I see. So do keep that in mind. But I think that is kind of a nice little example of brightening that up. If you do too much, it looks weird. And if you color outside the lines like I did, because I'm in a huge hurry trying to do this, it can be problematic. But see how that works for you. And it just is going to add a little bit more brightness in the areas that needed because it was looking a little underexposed. So I am pulling up shadows in those areas. That helps a little bit as well. But see if you can try those things with your bird and see how that works. This is a very, very quick edit, a little bit sloppily done, but you get the idea of the before, which feels a little darker, and the after, which makes that bird stand out in front of the background. But again, you want to do a little cleaner job than what I did. But I hope that helps because everything about this I really, really do enjoy. I love your background. I love that you can see vague trees here, but it's not distracting. I love the pose. I love the lighting is soft and pretty on this bird. I think it's a beautiful image. I just think that bird needs to stand out a little bit from the background. That's all. Nicely done. Okay. So here we go with egret again, and I love egrets, so I'm good with them all day long. So this is an interesting post-processing treatment, I believe, where you get these kind of warm, almost a vintage style to it, and I tend to gravitate to that. I like that quite a bit. Your sharpness is beautiful. It's tack sharp. I love that you can see sunlight coming through the bill. Everything is good. Your feather detail is perfect. Everything looks perfect here. So when you are focusing on this bird and you're using the right shutter speed, you can see what happens when you do the right thing. I think the treatment is interesting. I'm wondering if we can perhaps lighten it up a little bit, but I'm worried if we do that, we're going to lose the detail here. But think about that. I'm not going to go through each one and lighten it because, again, we'll be here all night if I edit every image. But just think about that because your legs are pure black. It might be nice to see a little detail here. Maybe soften that treatment a little bit, but it's a tack sharp image. And I really do like that you kind of played with the colors and gave it a little bit more vintage look. I say keep experimenting with that with your pictures. It's fun to have fun with images and giving them different looks. I get tired of the same old all the time. So for me, it's fun to do something different. And I'm glad that you did. Nice job. Okay. Oh, what a truly darling, darling image of this green heron. I love it. You couldn't have a better pose on that stick. I mean, there's birds on a stick, and then there's birds on a stick. And this is my kind of bird on a stick. I love this. I love this background, how the algae just goes almost white. I tend to be a fan of high key style images anyway, and this kind of lends itself in that genre. And I really love this. I love the subject separation from the background and the water. I don't mind these sticks back here. I mean, it'd be awesome if they weren't there, but I don't mind them. They're soft enough and they're far enough away that I think you can get away with it. If you really want to play with it and change the background or get rid of them, there are ways to do that, but I'm not going to go into that tonight. I don't think it really needs it. I think this is gorgeous. And when you look at the focus, I mean, that eye is tack sharp, the bill's tack sharp. There's even a little feather in the bill. The feather detail is beautiful. That tells me a lot. I know these are lower res JPEGs that are submitted, but you have a lot of detail in your image. You didn't overcrop this, and I see that sometimes in everyone's effort to get close to something, they crop the heck out of it, and then you lose all the detail. Um, it's a hard thing with birds. Birds are hard to do, and I applaud anybody that's doing it because it is very hard. But this is gorgeous. The lighting is perfect. I love this soft lighting. Perhaps tone this. I don't know if you can see my cursor very well. Maybe just tone that down a hair. Just darken it a little bit because it kind of blends in and it's still the stick and it's getting a little hot there with the light, but that's really a minor thing and about a 2-second fix. So I love this. I think it's beautiful. Let me try one quick thing, just real quick. I'm going to do my overlay blank layer. I'm going to go grab my brush and I'm going to use some white paint at about 10% opacity. And what would happen if we just gave a tad more light to the front of that bird? Just a little bit. I don't want tons. So if I pull back out, and I did it quickly, but see how that's pretty dark and that gives it a little bit more light. And if I did it too much, we can take the opacity back a little bit. And I probably would do less right here and a little more up here, but you get the idea. It just lends itself to a little bit more brightness, not lots, but it just brings my eye into that face a little bit more. I love it. And you can do the same thing with those sticks back here. I don't think I have the time to do it quite the way I want to, but you could do that with some black paints and or reduce the exposure a little bit. But this is a cool image. You should be super proud of it. I love it. It's a beautiful image. All right, next one. This is one of the pictures that I saw about the crossing bills, and I saw several others, and I was like, "Oh, is this the theme?" So here's finally one of them, and it wasn't the theme. And when all the pictures downloaded, I obviously could see the variations, but at first I was it struck my curiosity. You know what's funny? I love this picture, but this water is very interesting. Just like that wood duck picture, it's got really interesting water going on here. I love that. But nice, sharp image, great. The fact that I'm going to zoom in here, the fact that both eyes are in focus is very difficult to do with birds that are on two different planes. So this one is several inches in front of this one. And to get both of those in focus is challenging. So nice job for that. You would have had to use the proper f-stop and also been at the proper distance. You probably cropped in later, but usually you have to be pretty far away for that to work with a zoom lens. So you were further away and then cropped in, I suspect, and then got these two in focus that way. And you still managed to keep the detail for the most part in the feathers. You'll see here, this is called chromatic aberration, this little pink here. And let's see if we can find some more. There's a little bit here and here. Some of it can be blue or purple or magenta or even green. There's some green here. So when you see that in an image, you don't notice it pulling back a little bit, but when you see it moving forward, that can be due to a couple of things. Let's see if the uh, file data is in here. 200 millimeters, great shutter speed. You did not use a long, a high aperture. You kept it pretty wide. What lens? Does it say 7300? Okay. So what can happen is when we crop in quite a bit is usually when these things become more magnified. So it's a double-edged sword. Like you want to, you used actually a wide aperture, which means you would have had to stand back pretty far to get both of those birds in focus on that aperture. I would usually say f8, f11, sometimes even more. But you did it here, and that's because aperture stretches. The further away from you are from your subject, the depth of field stretches and gets wider and wider. But when you crop back in, sometimes you get this, it's called chromatic aberration. And that's the green here and the pink that we see here. And what happens is the light comes through your lens and has to get reorganized because it comes through a little hole in your lens, and then it has to fan back out and, get put on the sensor in order to take a picture. Those light rays and those colors and all of those things sometimes get a little bit misaligned. Some of that can be due to the quality of the lens. Some of that can be due to, cropping in a lot and it becomes magnified. It can sometimes be due to aperture and some other things. So I just bring that to your attention because it's something that a lot of lenses are now not correcting for as much because it's a very expensive thing to correct for. It can make a lens thousands of dollars more to correct for this. And it's a pretty simple thing in post-processing to fix. So if you go to, let me see here, filter, and I got to remember because it's been a little while since I've done it, but you can go to filter lens correction. And we can zoom in here a little bit more. Let's see here. There we go. And you can correct, you can do an auto correction or a custom correction, and you'll see chromatic aberration here. Fixed red or cyan, fixed green and magenta. Yours is green and magenta. And by sliding these sliders around a little bit, helps if I actually grab it. Sliding those sliders around, sometimes you can make that go away. It might be taking a minute because it's slower to process when I'm doing a webinar, but see how I'm sliding that to the right and it's making that reduced. You can also get rid of that in Photoshop by choosing that color and desaturating that. So go into hue and saturation, change master to magenta, grab this little dot, click this in here to pick that magenta color, and then desaturate that. You might have to do it a couple times or pick a couple of different colors to do it, but there you go. It's starting to go away, and you can do the same in the green. There's a little bit of a lag here because of just the processing time that it's taking to do that on my computer, but that can clean that up a little bit. So I hope that helps. But I love your composition, love the sharpness, love the story. Your lighting is nice. Really cool picture. I even love this quirky black background. Very nice. Okay. Oh, it's so cute. And I love that you've got this reflection in front of the female. Like that's just the icing on the cake for that picture. That is awesome. Again, beautiful lighting. Good lighting keeps the picture, looking not so harsh, very pretty. I really do enjoy this very much. Your sharpness is nice all the way throughout this entire image. Probably cropped in quite a bit to do that because if I were close to these birds, even zooming in close, she might be in focus and then these guys wouldn't be. But the fact that they're all in focus tells me either you shot it on a really high aperture, meaning, f16 or something like that, or you were standing further back and then cropped in. So if I go and look at the file data here, maybe it's there, camera data, F5. So you're probably further out and then cropped in. Do watch your shutter speed. It looks good. The picture looks sharp here, but 200th of a second can sometimes give you issues with moving subjects. I like my birds to be more like the shutter speed in for something swimming like this, maybe 500th of a second, just in case I don't capture it. But in this case, it looks sharp and your aperture worked. But you are getting some detail loss. See the purple and the light blue? That is from probably cropping a little too much. But if you do take this picture, one thing I would do is, again, similar to the last one, I would leave a little more room. You're cropping really close. Just give that a little more breathing room. Even something like that would help kind of maybe a little more help just let me breathe in that and let me not feel nervous about those ducks being quite so close to the edge. I think that can help tremendously. Lastly, as this is generating, See if you can tone down that white reflection or hot spot in the plant, and maybe tone this area up here down just so it keeps my eyes more in the center of the picture. But that feels a little better to me, not quite so tightly cropped. But cool moment. I love the moment. I love the light. I love that you've got these beautiful um, plants in the background, kind of gives it, anchors it instead of just ducks in the water. I think this is really pretty. And I hope those tips are helpful for you. Nice job. All right. Oh, beautiful, beautiful, beautiful bird. Is this a, I'm probably wrong on this. It doesn't look like a Savannah sparrow. It's too sharp of a bill. Help me out here if you guys can tell me what that sparrow is.
Female. It's a
Oh,
female ring blackbird.
geez. That's why it didn't. Oh my God. I feel like an idiot now. I should know that. And I'm just not in that mode at the moment. I was thinking sparrow, but I'm like, the bill doesn't make sense. That makes so much more sense that it's a female red wing. Thank you for that. Um,
Sure.
nice picture. This little stem that comes along and just jumps out. I love that. I think it's pretty. I think your background, the foliage, the little I don't know what they are, the little leaves behind here sticking up, like everything just supports that image. And I love that red. Like that just adds a little extra pop. I think it's beautiful. I like the way you crop this. I like that you have a catch light in the eye, that the bird is sharp. All of those things are really pretty and don't distract. There's not a lot of distractions in here. When I like to look at an image, this goes for anybody, whether it's in your camera or on your computer, play it on your camera or put it up on your computer. I squint. I literally will squint so everything gets blurry. And then it's sometimes easier to see where the bright and dark things are that jump out and whether you need to kind of accommodate for those either in your camera or in post to minimize that. But in this case, it looks fantastic. I really enjoy the image. If I zoom in close, you can see some feather detail. It is a little heavily cropped for my taste, but that is something too that I also recognize lower resolution images may have been submitted. So, but this is really lovely. Your light is pretty. You give the bird room to move and, kind of it's looking to the left. So you give it room to the left instead of, putting the edge of the picture right here. I really like it. I think it's beautiful. And personally, I've been schooled, but I really love that you captured a female subject and did her justice. So often people look at the males of things, and I think the females are quite pretty. And I am a little embarrassed that I really didn't realize that was a red-winged blackbird, but forgive me. Nice job on that. Okay. Oh, beautiful, beautiful, beautiful roseate spoonbill. One of my favorite birds, as many people also have as their favorite. So I love the sharpness in the wings. I love that this is moving forward and you've given the bird room to move. The diagonal line is really pretty that this is created. I really enjoy all of that. Everything is sharp. Your shutter speed looks good. All of that looks really good. I noticed that you've selected the bird and then darkened the background. And that can be a really good technique to kind of isolate that bird and minimize the distractions in the background, which, hate it when your distractions are a bunch of herons, excuse me, egrets. It's a pretty good day when those are your distractions. What I would say is when you're selecting a subject and then inverting it to darken the background, sometimes it can look a little unbelievable. So I would say like these wings look oversaturated to me. And if I look at my red channel again, you can see that it's pretty clipped right here. And the good news is that these are easy fixes because you already have the original image. So you can see this is like oversaturated in the reds, and yes, pink is part of red. So you kind of get this, Mary, it almost looks like my shirt that I had on before we started this webinar. I had a pink shirt on and in the webinar lighting, I don't know why, I've never worn that particular shirt, but it was like screaming hot pink, hurt your eyes to look at. So I changed it. And this could be simply a difference in the calibration of monitors too. So lots of reasons why this could be, but I think if you pulled back on the saturation a little bit, I'm going to try to do it quickly here. But if I just took the saturation back a little, it starts to look a little bit more natural. And I'm thinking that looks a little bit better personally.
Mhm.
You decide what works well for you, but I think just a little bit less of the pink, kind of brings it back to its natural state. The other thing is you've got a really hot highlight here. You might be able to tone that down and bring some feather detail there, but that might be overexposed. Right here, it looks like it's close, but I think there's still some detail there. So just pull down the highlights in that little area here, and I think you might really have a winner. When you select an image, sometimes these feathers look too perfectly cut out. So just be thoughtful about that, see how that works for you. But I really appreciate what you're trying to do here in subduing the background and giving me that bird. And it's a gorgeous pose on that bird. The eye is sharp. Everything is really perfect with your technique for capturing the bird, tracking the bird, getting that bird in focus and perfectly in flight with everything sharp. So that looks awesome. Just a few tweaks in post-processing, and I think you should be great. Nice job. And I'll say this too, I realize not everyone post processes and everyone's at a different point in learning. So some of the things that I explain, if they feel really redundant to you, there's probably someone in the room who doesn't know this yet. So that's why I'm kind of going back to some basics and building from there. All right, I think this is the first picture other than that butterfly that we didn't have a bird. And I love birds, so that's okay. But what a beautiful flower. It's a nice kind of change. And the pinks and the yellows, I mean, that just jumps right off the page. Your detail, I'm zooming in here. Look at how sharp that is right here where it needs to be. I'm not worried that these outer I guess, petals of this flower are not in focus. Many of them are. This one in the front doesn't bother me because it's here that I really want to look at. If you had these in focus and this wasn't in focus, it would be a totally different image and I wouldn't enjoy it nearly as much. I like your background. I like that you chose a brighter part here. As opposed to having a bright spot way up here. I like that it draws my eye in a little bit more. It's visually pleasing. Your background is simple, so it allows the flower to stand out. You have very much clutter at all in there, that flower would get lost in it because it's so busy itself. And it's beautiful, but it does got a lot going on. So the background needs to be extra clean to make it stand out. And you did that. Your lighting in the leaves is pretty. It's soft lighting. It's overcast or shaded light. And I really think that looks beautiful. Nice job on this. There really isn't anything that I would suggest you do to it. Maybe tone this down a little bit more, but I'm worried that that would give you more of a circle feel here. I think it's beautiful the way it is. I really enjoy the image. Okay, let's see. Oh, osprey catching. Boy, oh boy, two birds catching the same kind of fish. Not a good day if you're that kind of a fish. I don't remember the name of the fish. I know that it has one and it's escaping me at the moment because I have photographed a reddish egret in white phase, catching one of those a long time ago, Marco Island when I was in Florida. But this is nice of this osprey. You have nice wing position here where they're both up. You can see underneath the wings. You can see what's going on. They're both in focus. They're both sharp. You got the fish here and the talons. I always cringe. I feel so bad for the animals that are caught by these guys. I would not want that in my side. The eyes are in focus. Everything looks really good. You've got a dark spot over here, and I'm not sure why, if there's something in the way over there. I'm not sure what that is. It is kind of noticeable. So perhaps you could correct for that in post-processing. It does look a little heavily cropped, like this was really far away and you brought it close. But you know what? That is solvable. That is solvable with just time spent out there and getting them closer to you, or I hate to say it, money spent and getting a more expensive lens. But the things that you really need to have are the things that you did, which is a nice focus, a nice shutter speed, nice subject, nice light, tells a story. Those things are really important. The background is an all blue sky. That's okay. It doesn't, it's not a cluttery background like I can sometimes see. So you've got a really good set of skills here. And the rest is just, unfortunately, time spent and or money spent. But good job on this. I really like it. Nice job. Oh, look at that eye contact. That is crazy cool. I'm going to zoom in so you guys can see that. that is like the death stare. It is pretty awesome. He is really looking at your lens going, is it food? Is it, who are you? Are you going to attack me? What? Beautiful, sharp detail from literally head to toe. The wings are nice. The lighting is nice. It's really, really beautiful. And, interesting choice of vignette here. It's pretty strong. I'm assuming you vignetted this. It's pretty strong. I would maybe subdue it a little just for my taste. And if you like it, leave it because, photography is a thing where if we all like the exact same picture, the exact same way, we would take one total picture and be done forever. Photography has its variability and people have their styles and don't ignore that. If that's something you want to do and you like that look, go right ahead. It's just a difference of taste. But I absolutely frigging love the bird and the image and how sharp that is. Really, really nice job. One question, and I don't know if the person's on the line, if this was a replaced sky or if this was the original, because it looks a little unusual of a tone of blue for what I would think of for a sky, but I don't know. But overall, really, really nice job and absolutely exquisite pose in there. I mean, you just got to take a second look at that. That is just pretty darn cool. Beautiful image. I like your crop as well with the diagonal line. It worked perfectly as a vertical as opposed to horizontal. Nice job. All right. We're making our progress. How are you guys doing out there? Is this helpful?
Yes, I think so. Hopefully other people do.
I hope so. Boy, this is Osprey week here. I got 3 in a row of Osprey. This is cool too. I really am in love with, I mean, of course the bird, because that's cool. But this background is so cool with the sand and the beachy and the little bit of grasses up here. Like I know exactly where this is. I don't mean literally like what place in Florida it is, but I know where it has been taken, generically speaking. And I just love that it's so subtle, but it's there. And then this bird diving in, that is so cool. Really nice light on that bird. Do watch this little hot spot. I think we could be close to clipping the edge. If you go back to your original image, see if you can just tone that down a little bit, bring some feather detail back, perhaps in the foot as well right here. But that is really, really, really a nice image. If you wanted to, I'm not going to edit the whole thing. I'm giving you some tips, but see how I'm on that overlay blank layer with white paint. Let's do about 10% opacity here. I am just curious because this gets a little dark, if we could lighten that up. And I'm just doing a few coats on here to see if we can get that a little bit lighter. It might help balance out that image a little more. Be careful that you don't, like I'm coloring outside the lines and see how it gives that halo. Be careful when you do this that you don't get a halo. But see how that's just lightening that up a little bit. Don't want to do it too much, and I've done it with the halo, which I don't want to do. But see if just a touch of that might help balance out that bird, tone down that neck a little bit. If it gets milky, then there's no detail there and there's not much you can do. And I don't suggest leaving a milky dark tone there. But this is an awesome image. I really think it's very cool. And it's just fabulous. That is so cool. Nice job on that. Beautiful. By the way, good shutter speed, tack sharp all the way through. Very nicely done. Okay. We've got a mammal, everyone. This first one. I love it. And I do realize this is the Audubon group, right? So it is primarily birds. And this is, when I see lots of birds, I love birds. So I am not saying that as a negative at all. But what a cool little guy that you've captured here. I love him. I love the face, the eye contact with you and his face, is just so cute. I know some people don't like raccoons, but I think they're adorable. So I love this. I love that you've got some soft lighting on him. It's not garish and hot. It's just gentle, but you can tell he was taken close to being in the shade. So again, I would go into my camera raw here and just warm that up a little bit. And I would go into color and click the little dropper again and pick something that is supposed to be white. And then it warms it up. Now this looks too warm. So again, you can always go back and kind of adjust it accordingly. Let's leave it about there. That looks correct to me. And then I would do my little trick that I share with people sometimes to just make those eyes pop a little bit more. So blank layer, overlay, blending mode, white and black paint again. We've done this multiple times, but I'm going to do this with this image. And I am going to just gently, at about 10% opacity, play up those catch lights a little bit more. And then I am going to, with a small brush, let's get way in here, I'm going to lighten up that skin under the eyes. And if you really want to get fussy, you could go in with a brush, excuse me, your sponge tool, or you could use a desaturate tool in Photoshop. And I'm going to desaturate some of that purple. Whoops, helps if I'm on the right layer. I'm going to desaturate some of that purple that's in there that just kind of doesn't look natural, right? So I'm taking the purple out right there, and we can take out a little of the purple here. And that is just due to, again, being in shade and the blue tones really creating some extra nonsense here in the image. But we take that out, it'll look a little bit more natural. And then you can go back to highlighting as needed. So we can add a little bit more white light there. Give a little brightness on the other side. Wherever the light comes in strongest, it literally exits the eye as a refraction. And so I'll lighten that a little bit. And then we can go in and bring a little more lightness around the eye. And if you want to add black to bring back that pupil a little bit, you can. We can even add a little more contrast right in there. And the eye tends to look a little more natural. So there's the before and there's the after. See how it just brings that out a little bit more in the eye? I might darken that, got a little bright. I might darken that back down a little bit and then do the same thing with the other eye in the animal. But it just gives that eye a little bit more visual interest and contrast, which will draw your eye to it. And naturally, we as humans want to be drawn to the eyes of the animals. So if we can make that without overdoing it, there's an overdo, but without overdoing it, just pull your eye in there. I think that'll help. This is a really nice image. Very nice job. Good job. I love it when it's little tweaks in Photoshop that can fix things because it means your technique was good, everything was good in camera, and just a few little things will help. I love anhingas. They're so cool. And this is one of those, to me, rare shots where the parent is feeding the baby and the background isn't immediately leaves. Like you have this separation. Every anhinga nest that I have seen, not that I get to see a ton, but the ones that I have seen in the Everglades, have all been right against the tree with the limbs and the, random reeds and dead
Yes.
things, and they're just like, oh, cool moment, and then it's ugly.
Hmm.
You did it. You did a nice job of getting this super clean background. And then the light is so nice. Um, I can get right in here and see the bird and see the action, and yet it's not blown out, right? I'm looking at my highlights. This is the pink bird here, the baby, and then it fades off here to some lightness, but the lightest things in the images are right here and they're not blown out. They're not clipped all the way. This is really a really pretty image. I like the story that you told. I like the way you cropped it. I like the lighting. I think it looks really good. We've lost a little detail here. And you can see in the luminosity channel, we're pretty close to black. You might be able to lift that a little bit. I realize it's black feathers, but usually we'll see a little black, detail in the blacks, which means it's dark gray. You might be able to lift that a tad and see if you get any more detail there. And then this looks close to sharp, but not exactly sharp. It could be due to the cropping, but there is a tool that you can try, and it's called Topaz Sharpen. There's also a Topaz AI now that you could try, but that sometimes when it's real soft, like just barely out of focus, you can't do crazy out of focus, but when it's just a little soft, you can sometimes play with this and see if we can get it a little sharper. So you can adjust these tools, and I'm not going to adjust all of them right now. And you can see it's updating here. And I'm going to apply it, and we're going to see the difference. And I think that's going to crispen up that image because it's just a hair soft. Could be due to cropping, could be due to slightly missed focus, or maybe you're at the end of your focus length. Some zoom lenses tend to be a little soft when you zoom out to the very end of their capabilities. But let's zoom in, and there's the before and there's the after. And I didn't even play much with the software. I just kind of let it do what it wanted to do. But that did crispen that up a little bit. And I think that's a really cool image and a great story. I love that you can see both of the eyes of each bird. Cool picture and amazingly awesome background for how difficult that is to get. Nice job. All right. Oh, this is absolutely stunning. What a great photo. Um, I first of all, just the impression, the tones. I love the tones. I love these beautiful greens, soft, kind of sagey green in there. I just love green is my favorite color, so that may be part of it. But seriously, I love the lighting and the tone. It's awesome. It looks painterly. And I always laugh. Somebody told me this the other day with a picture that I had taken. They said, "Oh, that looks like a painting." And I said, "Isn't it funny that when we take really good pictures, people say, 'Oh my gosh, that's so good. It looks like a painting.' And for painters, when they paint really, really well, people say, 'Oh, that looks like a photograph.'" I don't know what that is, but I find it curious. So I just love this. I love the wing movement. I love the sharpness in the face, the softness in the light. The bird of paradise is beautiful. I really, really am in love with this image. I think it's absolutely gorgeous. It's sharp where it needs to be. Everything, every little detail looks lovely here. If you were to change anything, and I certainly wouldn't change much, I would think that a little toning down, not a lot, because I really like that my eye is brought over here to see the rest of the bird of paradise. But if you just drop down the very brightest parts of that, I'm going to do a kind of a quick sloppy job here. I don't want to remove all the brightness, but I probably don't even want to remove that. I hit that on accident. But if you could tone that down and also, just hit those tips. And again, I'm doing a sloppy job because I'm in,
Mhm.
kind of a time crunch, but it will draw my eye back to this bird. And then similarly, just ever so slightly, brighten up that face ever so slightly, maybe even a little down in here, maybe even just a little here. I am creating a balance where you're not seeing this draw your attention away. Whoops, excuse me. It just kind of is there to support the image, but it's pretty darn good the way it is. I mean, I really love this. So there's your before. See how if you're looking at the image, your eye tends to go to the left? Or
Mhm.
there's the after, and I'm just trying to coax your eye back to the bird and let the other things be supportive. And I did a quick job. You can spend more time doing the details. I just did a really quick one. You may not like it. You may want to add a little more lightness or a little less, but you get the idea. But this is outstanding. It's such a unique picture. I have never seen a yellow it's not a yellow,
Red,
a
red
red-bellied
bellied.
woodpecker, yes, on a bird of paradise before. I mean, that alone is pretty awesome. Really cool shot. You should be so proud of that. I know I would be if I had that in my portfolio. It's a winner. It's gorgeous. I love it. I love your crop too. Perfectly done. Wouldn't change a thing. I love it. Great job. You should be proud of that. I love that I'm seeing so many interesting images tonight. They're just unusual. The Anhinga with the chick, the in the beginning we had I got to go all the way back to the beginning, but in the beginning we had, the bittern out in the open.
Mhm.
We've had the some kind of kingfisher that was actually sitting there, which they never do. We've had the heron that was in all those reeds, but in leaves, but it was popping out in the light. The tricolored heron that was forming that circle because it was preening. I mean, the catbird. I mean, I'm looking back at all these, like there's so many interesting poses. The green heron that was in those. algae that were really light colored, and so on and so on. Just so many cool images, the osprey with the beach behind it, and then the other one looking at us, and on and on. I'm really impressed with the moments you guys are finding. Um, that is the hardest part, and you've nailed that. So photography can be improved all day long, but I am just really impressed with what I'm seeing, and congratulations, you guys. You're doing great work. All right. Oh, hummingbirds, my thing. I love hummingbirds. Of course, I'm gonna go see them this coming week for my workshop. So nicely done of catching this bird in the flower and the wings in action. One of the curious things, let me see if I can find the shutter speed data on this. If it's showing 1/3200th of a second, f9, ISO 5000. Yes, you need a lot of shutter speed to freeze action in the hummingbirds. And even when you use 5,000th of a, or no, we're at 3,200th of a second. Even when you're at 3,200th of a second, you're only going to be able to freeze the action in the wings when the wings are fully back before they transition forward, and when they're fully forward and then transition backwards. So it's at those two moments where the wings slow down enough. And if you happen to hit that moment with your shutter speed, you're golden. Other than that, there's still going to be soft wings. Now, I don't personally, and this is added information beyond the picture, I don't personally mind either way if you imply motion by showing wing blur in a hummingbird or any other bird, or whether you have the wings tack sharp. But if you want those wings tack sharp, there isn't currently a camera, to my knowledge, that can shoot with a shutter speed fast enough to do it at any point in the wing beat. The fastest they go is about 8,000th of a second for some cameras that allow you to go that far. And what you really need, and this is what I do with my flash photography, I have very low powered flashes, so it doesn't harm the hummingbirds, and we only do it in the daylight, and they're not bothered at all. But we use multi-flash setups to freeze the action in any position. And the shutter speed that low burst of a flash is the equivalent to is 1/10,500th of a second. So it's really fast, and it's a really short burst, and that's going to freeze the action in your wings. Your shutter speed actually doesn't even freeze it. We shoot at about 1/160th of a second, but then the shutter's open, the flash happens, and then the shutter closes. So it is just a small fraction of a second to do that. So I say this only because if you're sitting there trying to freeze the action in the wings and you're having a hard time doing it, none of our cameras will literally allow us to do that with consistency every single shot because of how fast these little birds can beat those wings. It's amazing what they can do. 50, 60, 70 times per second. It's incredible. But you did it. You got this nice sharpness here. Tiny bit of wing blur at the very end, maybe, but I think it actually is beautiful that way. I love that you got this little flash of color in the feathers behind the eye. This is cool that it's caught up in a spider web. It just kind of adds a little more visual interest to that image. I really like this. Your brightness here does draw my eye into the bird. But I think if you, and you probably can take the original image and try it, but if you go in, and I've done this before, but let's try to pull down the highlights a little and see if that's going to help. And then we're going to brighten them up in here and just balance out that bird. So see when I just pull down the highlights a little, it brings back a little more detail and also a little more saturation because those colors aren't starting to get blown out. And then if I go to lighten the bird, so I'm going to do this, and I'm going to pull up shadows, and let's try a little bit of exposure, maybe even a little highlight in case there is some highlight in there. And then I'm going to go in quickly. You'll want to be more careful because I might color outside the lines here a little bit. Let's try to pull the exposure up a little bit more. But see how when we do that, it allows me to see that whole bird a lot better. And so now you've got a little more highlight in there, got a little more detail, and click OK. And you'll be able to see the before and after. So there's the before, there's the after. It just allows me to see the whole bird. So I really like that. If I could change one thing, and it's very hard to change, it would be this dark stick or whatever it is back here. That's hard. That's hard to really change. I mean, you could try cropping in tight and doing something like that. But that's hard. You could spend forever in Photoshop kind of playing around with the background or asking, AI, excuse me, AI tools to do something. That's hard too. But if maybe the only solution could be, and I don't know if this will work, um, it's kind of hard in that case, but you could go in with your brush again and go into highlights and pull these way down. Notice how this flower doesn't have a ton of highlights on it anyway, so I'm not going to really impact the flower all that much, but I might be able to coax out some of that brightness and at least tone it down a little. And again, you can work on this, more as needed. You could pull the exposure down a little bit. And similarly, if we lightened, again, I want to darken what I don't want people to attend to as much and lighten what I do want people to attend to as much, and or add contrast or reduce contrast. So if I played with a little bit of exposure or lifted shadows in here, I don't want to hit the bird because I just edited the bird, but you might be able to kind of give a little brighter spot in here with some time in editing, just to kind of, again, coax people's eyes over here and not so much over there. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And so there's the before. And notice how my eye goes here and over here. And there's the after. I've just kind of less interesting here. Let's not pay attention as much, a little bit more interest there. And that's a quick edit. Spending time will obviously give you much better results. And then I think I hit the bird on the belly a little bit when lightening it, so I would tone that back down. But those are just some thoughts, but that's such a cool image. And I think don't ignore, I don't know how big the image is, file size, but don't ignore even, something like so.
Yeah.
Excuse me, maybe crop it a little bit better than that, but don't ignore something like that. That can certainly be potential too if you have enough image data to do that with. But just throwing that out there, I don't think that's bad either. But the whole story, excuse me, is really lovely. Nice job on that. Excuse me, sorry, frog in my throat. All right, sandhill crane time. Love it. Um, This guy is really cool. Look at how the sunlight has captured the catchlight in the eye and the brightness in that. I love that so much. It's a cool story. It's telling me where this gator or where this crane is at, and it's pointing right at a fed gator as a dead gator, and I'm sure he doesn't want to be the one feeding a gator. So I really like the story about this. One of the things that can happen when, and this goes back to, I mentioned it earlier in the session, if our cameras are picking whatever's in focus or whatever it wants to, and it's not something you're directing to pick the focus on, you're not literally moving that focus button, it can miss focus. So notice how the writing, a fed gator is a dead gator, is reasonably sharp, and the bird's face is reasonably soft. It just, for whatever reason, picked focus point as a sign back here. Now, often it won't, but the head is a smaller object and this is a bigger object and it just missed focus. So if you can, with your camera, learn how to adjust your focus point so you can move it around and be decisive in what you want to focus on, that can be helpful. Now, with a moving crane and you're probably in a hurry because you don't want to miss it, I get that it's a hard thing to move that around. That becomes muscle memory after a while. You don't even think about it. You just do it without thinking. So do it on something simple, like, your dog going, in the backyard sitting there, or a flower, or something where you can change your focus point to what it's focusing on and not focus on something else inadvertently. But I think your lighting on this bird is very nice. I'd like to see the legs. One little tip is to not, and you didn't exactly do this here, but I'm going to mention it. If you're ever cropping, don't crop at a joint. Don't cut off at an elbow, a knee, a wrist, anything like that. It tends to feel a little awkward and painful visually. If you leave a little more of the leg, like if you had half the leg down here and you cropped mid, I don't know what the bones are, mid femur, mid whatever, mid shin, that will feel a little bit better visually. But I would try that. But your lighting looks good. your positioning, I like that you're leaving some room for him to go forward. I don't know that you need all this extra background here. I think something like this could probably work better because we don't need the rest of that to tell the story. But I would work on the focus. That certainly will give you a lot of help. And if I were to shoot this, maybe you're trying to tell the story of the sign here and the bird, and I get that. If not, wait a second for him to move and eliminate as many background obstacles as you can from the picture so I can focus on the bird more. But I love the lighting. I love the bird. I love that eye and the catch light. I think it's really cool. And a few tweaks, I think you'll be there. Nice job. All right. Sandhill cranes again. It's funny because these titles don't all have Sandhill crane immediately, but they're showing up together in the title. This is super cool. I love sandhill cranes as well. I do a workshop in Bosque del Apache in Socorro, New Mexico on photo artistry, which is a very artistic viewpoint of photographing cranes. And it kind of throws out a lot of our traditional rules and we put in some new ones. But I love photographing cranes, but I don't get to see them in the summer except for in Alaska. And I love these little colts and how cute they are. You guys are so lucky in Florida that you get to see this much more regularly than I do. Love the soft lighting on this. I love that both birds are up and looking, and you can see the parent's eye, the birds, and this bird and this bird's eye. I like that this leg is moving, and it's just, another little extra bit of gesture that really helps the image. I like your crop on this a lot. One little thing that I would say is you're really close to the edge, and when we are photographing any animal that has its feet hidden by, dirt, reeds, water, anything like that, grasses, you want to crop the image as if the feet were there. So it doesn't feel like you've cut off the feet, even though you can't see the feet, just leaving a little bit more room for those feet to exist. If we could, have, X-ray vision and see them through the grass, we'll feel better photographically. So let me just do that really quick. Usually generative expand, which is an AI tool. And I know AI makes me nervous too, but it's a quick way to show you an example of what I mean. So I now have room for these feet, which probably live in the grasses right around here, and then some room below. I don't know what that was, but I'd get rid of that. But that would just give me a little more breathing room for those feet. But I love this image. I think it's beautiful. And without doing it, I would just say, maybe gently with those tools that I showed you how to do, the little overlay layer and the white paint. Okay, I guess I am doing it. I would just try to bring a little more light into that face. Just a little more, maybe even on the birds. You could blend it into the neck a little bit. It's not that the image is dark, it's that I just want to draw your attention to these eyes and make it easier for people to see them. And by lightening that up a little bit, that can really help. You could even lighten the grasses underneath ever so slightly. And I'm doing it quickly. I usually don't edit this quickly. But it can just draw a little attention if you need to, have people get down to something, move their eye from one place to another. Little tricks like that can help. And so there's the before. I don't know that the grass needs it, but there's the after I just used as an example. That just helps. It doesn't look unnatural, but it just helps me find those eyes, which are so important. Beautiful job, lovely image. I really enjoy this image. Very cool moment. And two little colts, which are so cute. Okay, we've just got a few pictures left. What a gorgeous stilt, and the fiery water is super cool. I love that, and kudos, I think, for getting down lower. It looks like you were lower to the ground than someone standing at 5 or 6 feet. So that looks really, really nice. Or you used a really long lens and we're very far away, but that looks really nice. It looks nice and sharp. You can see that they're picking up little, invertebrates or whatever out of the water. I love this fiery background. It's unusual. Usually I see stilts and it's like blue water or gray water or, whatever. This is unusual and I like it for that reason. I think everything looks really nice with your composition and your crop. I love that you got the reflection there. I would be cautious. It doesn't look like we've clipped the highlights, but I'd be cautious. It could be close if you're shooting something like this again, but it doesn't look like it according to the metadata here in the histogram. Um, Little picky things that I would do if I had time and you're willing to do it, is I would just get rid of things that distract my eye. If you're okay doing this. Now, there is journalistic photography that says like no edits, right? Other than slight contrast and exposure adjustments or maybe dust removal. And then there's the whole other end of the spectrum where people, take their images and turn them into paintings and all those things. You have to pick what feels right for you for the genre that you're using it for. There's no wrong. It's just wrong for a certain situation. You have to know the rules of what you're doing and where it's going to go to see if what you want to edit fits the place that you're going. So I would just simply remove these little distractions here that take me right to the edge of the image and make it really bright. And I'm like, don't really need that. So by cleaning up some of those things, sometimes it takes a few clicks to get it to work. But by cleaning up some of that, it really can help keep my eye more towards the bird. And like this big, strong reed right here, I would either try to eliminate it or tone it down. So I'm going to try to eliminate it first, see how it didn't do too bad of a job. It messed up this water a little bit. So I might try to tone it down instead. But those little things, those little visual distractions, it can take an image from being okay or good to really, really nice. So just, little things like that. And it's kind of one of those things you start going, it's like having a pair of tweezers. You don't know when to stop plucking, right? But it gives you a little bit more of an easier image to look at. So there's the original. There's the one I cleaned up a little bit. You get the idea. But I think that looks really, really nice. And maybe just tone that one down a little bit because it's pretty bright in there. But again, sometimes it's hard to know where to stop. But I think it's a gorgeous image with a gorgeous pose, beautiful reflection. I love those fiery colors. It's nice and sharp. Well done. And I can see some of the comments in here. Thank you for the kind words. And Julie had said, great photo, so unique. And it is unique. I've not seen one like that. That is awesome. All right. We've got, I think, 4 more. All right. Beautiful perspective. Thank you for giving me a different perspective on life with this picture. I was just teaching last week in Jekyll Island, Georgia, and I was talking about perspective and changing up the perspective. And in fact, one of their assignments was to shoot something top down and then bottom up and just see what you can come up with. And you weren't there, but you did it. I love that you chose this very unique perspective. And I'm sure it was a difficult one to do to get your camera down there. And with this bug here, you don't want them to fly away. I actually love these lines back here. I don't know why, but they just work for me. This one, I don't know if I love, but I feel like if I took it out, it would lose something. So I say keep it in. Your focus looks sharp. I know this is pixely because, again, resolution most likely, but it looks sharp despite that. What I would say, and I'm probably feeling like a broken record, but just go in and brighten that up a little bit. So if we brightened up, I'm going to pull up the exposure first. I love your sky, so I don't want to lighten that too much. But then I might actually go in. Let's see if I can select the object. And I wonder what would happen if I selected this and then brightened that up a little bit. And then what if I selected this and then brightened that up as well, which it did naturally brighten up. What if I warmed it up a little bit and just hit the saturation a touch? Kind of brings a little more interest to it. And maybe we could try it with these other sticks here. I'm not sure. But it's such a cool perspective. See how we just brightened that up? And I did lift the whole thing a little bit, but we could take the original sky back if we wanted to do that. I'm not going to go through all that right now, but we could do that. But it just gives me a little more light and life in there. And then if I lightened up just by hand a touch more, I think it's going to give it a little more vibrance and a little bit more punch. And again, you're doing this on your original copy instead of a, small resolution copy, I think would be handy dandy. And I really like that. So then to address these things back here, they're pretty dark and contrasty. A little simple tool that you could try to do. There's two things. I can go to, let me make a new copy of this here. I hope all these editing tips are helpful because I feel like these images are great. With a little tweak, they could just be amazing. So one thing I can try is I can go with my brush and I could pull contrast way back and pull shadows up a bit. And let's see if we can preserve them without kind of losing the detail. Let me try okay, contrast is already back, shadows up. Because there's something about it I really like. I think what we might need to do is soften it a little bit more. And I'm going to use, where's my clone tool in here? There it is. I'm going to take my clone tool and I am going to use this at about 20%. I'm going to sample in here and just dab. Sample and dab. And I kind of did that a little bit hastily and I left a line there, but I'm going to leave it for the sake of time. But we could sample and dab and kind of soften that. That might help put those a little bit more in the background and leave your dragonfly a little bit more in the foreground. These are just some ideas. You can play and spin on it as you wish, but it's a really neat thing. And the first thing that caught my eye on this was the perspective. And I loved that you chose a different look than just shooting it, straight on or top down like so many do. Really nice job. And I do like those weeds in the background. I'm not sure. I still might want to play with that a little bit more. I don't want to waste time tonight, but those are my thoughts. If you can subdue them a little bit, bring this one a little bit more forward, it'll have a little more impact, but it's a really cool shot. And the next time you're out there doing dragonflies, keep it up because this is cool and it catches your eye. Everybody shoots dragonflies at the same level or top down. And seeing one from the bottom up like that is really refreshing and it catches my eye. So nice job. All right. We're getting near the end, my friends. Anhinga time. And there is a beautiful anhinga drying its wings. It's facing to the left. You've got this nice focus here. I really enjoy that quite a bit. I like that you can see the detail in the wings from edge to edge. This isn't your fault. I just wish that stick was out of the way. And there are ways to get rid of it, as I've showed you in post-processing. If you wanted to, you could do that. There's a tool called, there's two. There's a spot healing brush, and then there's also a remove tool, which is this one right here. And I will see if it will work. It's kind of a newer tool, and it sometimes has a mind of its own. But I'm going to draw across here and see if we can remove it. Kind of worked, kind of didn't work. Sometimes if you do it 2 or 3 times, sometimes then that will work. But that would be my thought, is if there's a way to get rid of that. I mean, you could clone it out if you spent time. It looks like it's cropped a little heavily, which therefore you lose some of the detail here. If I could say anything, I think a general comment, and I can't tell for sure because I know these are also lower resolution submissions, but sometimes the cropping just gets a little heavy in an effort to make the bird look as big in the frame as we can, because you might not have a $10,000 lens or whatever it takes, or you might not have the camera that you'd really love to have, or you might not have the ability to get any closer because all kinds of reasons. And sometimes crop is our next best thing. But one thing I'll challenge you to try when you're out there, and I have to do this myself, is instead of shooting what I want in my head, step back for a minute and think about how you can shoot what nature gave you. So if it's a big, vast scene, maybe that's the scene. And yes, there's a bird in it, but maybe there's something else there that doesn't need to be cropped a lot and could give you a beautiful thing. And it may or may not be the bird, right? It could just be that here's a pretty swamp with some trees. But try to think about also shooting what nature gives you. It could be the bug that's on a leaf in the foreground that you didn't even notice. It could be, you know, a frog in the corner, but close to you. And obviously, we all want the birds because I want the birds too. But while you're there, shoot your bird. But then think about what else is nature giving you and what other opportunities are right there where your feet are planted that you could discover and that would be suited really well for your camera, your lens, and your skill. And you'd be surprised what you notice when you just stop and look a little longer and pay a little more attention. There's really some cool things out there in addition to the birds. But I do love the fact that you caught this with the wings open and kind of looking back is nice. All those things are really nice. Your exposure looks nice. The light isn't harsh. It's really pretty. It looks like it was probably a hazy blue sky, which softened that light, but still gives you that dynamic range. But those are my thoughts, and I just hope that helps because it's fun to photograph nature and also frustrating at times. And we always improve on everything that we do. And again, I'm hoping all of this just moves people in a direction that just gives you more results and more rewards with all of this. Like this guy, he's pretty darn cool. I love this. I always love owls and the facial disc and the features on these particular owls are so pretty. If I am correct, this is a screech owl with more of the gray phase, if I am correct, and holler if I'm wrong, because I don't get out to see all the East Coast birds that much anymore. Sometimes. But this is really cool. I love that your background really frames him up nicely. You've got this, you know, beautiful hole in which he's sitting, but the color contrast is really nice. You've got these cooler gray tones, the warmer background. I think that's really pretty. Nice detail in the face. The lighting is nice. It's simple and soft, but it's nice. I think you did a really nice job here. I love the texture in the trees as well and how that just, I don't know, the whole thing just looks really, really pretty. It is a little cropped up and a little soft. And again, could be just the submission. I'm just seeing what I see here in the image version that I have. So I would maybe go back and look at the original and see if there's more detail there. But you could also try to crisp it up a little bit. Try that topaz sharpen, and there's other tools too. You don't have to use that one. Little nitpicky thing, I would probably get rid of that little thing right there. Just those little things can make such a difference in your image just because it's something that my eye catches. So a good trick for all of you is to just take a tour around your image. Yes, you have the owl, but then pay attention to everything else that your eye stops at. And is it something you want people to notice? Or is it something you don't want people to notice? And if it's something you don't, try making it less contrasty. Try toning it down if it's too bright. Try cloning it out or getting it out some other way, cropping it out, cutting it out, you know, use content aware fill, whatever, any of the tools that are out there. And that will help tremendously. And when it is something you want them to see, increase the brightness or contrast of it a little bit if it's not already there, and that will help tremendously. This I don't think needs it because it's bright in all the right places, darker in all the right places, and a great composition for that image. Nice job. Oh, sorry, my computer decided to freeze up for a second. Let's try that again. Oh, there we go. All right. I don't know what it is about pictures today, but I'm noticing the backgrounds in all of them. And you have some of the most interesting backgrounds. I love this. I think if you didn't have a bird here and you literally just took this picture like this, you'd have a really interesting picture. Like I think that alone is super cool. I'm kind of a fan of abstracts and different patterns and textures, so that's probably why, but I think it's a really cool background. Limpkins, another one of my favorite birds. I love them. I just think they're the coolest looking things. So nice with him grabbing some food. I love that you captured action. It's something more than just a bird standing there. I'm very much in love with your background as well. Um, I wish I could go there and just shoot that because it's super cool. And then the limpkin's a nice bonus. But I like your lighting. It's soft, it's pretty. This almost looks like a painting or a sketch, and I really appreciate that about this image. And I mean that in a great way. I think again, it could be a little pixely or cropped in, and again, it could be just the submission size. But we've lost some detail here. However, I still think it looks like a painting. It looks like maybe a watercolor. I think there's something to this. And if you took this picture and printed it out on some cotton rag paper, which is a little bit more of a textured paper, or even a watercolor paper, printed it out in matte on that matte cotton rag paper and made it into a note card, or deckled the edges and printed it and glued that onto another note card so it kind of looked like matted, I think it'd be really cool. I like this quite a bit. So there are some advantages of sometimes having less detail, and it kind of translates that into a whole other art form. Again, I would like to see a little bit, and not a lot, because we don't want to change the species into something else, but a little bit of extra brightness around the face, just to make it something that I am drawn into. So now I can see the face better, and you could even play a little bit with maybe some of the lighting in here. Try to do it real quick. I might lighten it a little bit more than that, not a ton, but just give it a little bit of shape and depth there. I love this though. Could even play with the grasses a little bit if you wanted to, but there's the before and after, and I really, really enjoy that. If you are printing it as a card or something, maybe get rid of this dark spot right there. Whoops, helps if I actually do it on the right layer. Let's get rid of that. And that just takes that little distraction away, maybe even this one, that one, little things like that. But this is cool. I love this picture. The quality is just very sketch-like in watercolor, and I'm drawn to that. So nicely done. Really pretty picture. I enjoy that. And again, a bird I absolutely love. All right, last one for the records tonight, my friends, and good job for hanging in there with all of it. All right, now somebody looks like they're more on my side of the tracks here in Arizona with this cardinal. And I am second guessing myself. This must be a cardinal. The bill looks exceptionally heavy, almost like a pyrrhoxia. Um, Correct me if I'm wrong. I feel like I knew my birds, and then today all of a sudden, like, oh, maybe I don't know my birds, or I'm just overthinking it. But beautiful, beautiful composition, gorgeous, soft, pretty background that really complements this bird quite a bit. I really, really love this image a lot. I think your composition is excellent. It's in focus and sharp and pretty, and it just the simple background. Thank you, Vermilion Cardinal. I knew I wasn't losing my mind. I was like, okay, this doesn't, because Cardinals bills don't look that way, and it looks more like a Parallaxia, but it isn't, and it just didn't look right. So thank you, Paula, for telling me that. Beautiful bird. Nice. And it also makes more sense why you'd have the cactus if you were in Colombia. Um, just same thing I'm always going to say with this is let's just build up the catchlight in the eye a little. So it's naturally there. I'm just going to try to just bring your eye into it a little bit more. And wherever the light comes in, the light comes out the opposite side. So I'm going to just very lightly brighten that up. I'm going to add some black and darken the pupil a little in case I've kind of whitewashed the pupil. You've already got nice edges on the eye in the edge here, so I don't really need to clean that up much. And then a little white around the skin around the eye. Again, I don't want to change it into a, white eye rings vermilion cardinal. But sometimes that skin that reflects light, that skin is scaly and it reflects light, and just adding some contrast. That's all we're doing. Adding some contrast will be able to draw my eye more easily into that area. And then, if you want to make it a tad brighter, not much, don't want to change it into something else, tad brighter, you can do so. So let's zoom it back out, see where we're at. There's the before, there's the after. We could still probably play with that a little bit more. I don't know if I love all the lightness around that I added, so let's subdue that a little bit. But I think that's a beautiful picture and a beautiful bird, and I love your background. Love, love, love. I would tone this little area down right here. That's it, in that little nip right up there. Just beautiful. I think you did a fantastic job. What a great way to wind up the day. And I've really enjoyed this. I hope this has been helpful for you. I know we've spent quite a bit of time going through the things, but I want it to be educational, and I really hope that it was. I'm going to stop sharing my screen And I will also put my information in the chat window again, along with several different ways to follow me. If anybody wants to learn more about sessions that I do, including free webinars, low-cost tutorials sessions, all kinds of things, workshops, I don't email often, maybe once or twice a month. So I don't spam you. I don't sell your information. I don't give it away. I don't do anything like that. But if you want to get notified or jump in on something, um, being on my newsletter is the best way to do so because most of my stuff sells out before I ever have the chance to announce it to the public. I give newsletter people, members, access first to the options of joining any of my events. So on that note, I'll turn it back over to the group and any comments you want to add in the chat window or otherwise, you're welcome to do so.
Everybody loved it, Lisa.
Thank you.
Can't
Thank
believe
you.
how long everybody has stayed with us.
I know. I kind of was like, oh, I'm going over, but we had 37 images and
I
I
know.
wanted it to also be informative. Just me just going, this is pretty and that's not, doesn't help anybody.
Yeah,
But I really do appreciate that if you stayed on and got the knowledge. And if you had to go, you have the recording.
yeah. It was wonderful, amazing, and obviously everybody seemed to enjoy it and
Good.
learned a lot. So
Good. That's
hopefully you'll
helpful.
hopefully we'll get you next year too.
Yes, absolutely.
Right.
And I appreciate people sending in those images. It's nerve-wracking to do that and have somebody review them. But I'm proud of everyone for doing that because I personally know how hard it is. It is still hard for me. You know, we're all very sensitive. This is our craft, this is our love. And I really appreciate that everybody did it because you know what? There's a bunch of people out there who don't and won't do it. And you know what? They're never going to learn and grow in the same way. So good for you and take all of I said in good heart and in good faith and keep shooting and enjoying the birds and all the animals that you've been capturing. It's beautiful stuff. I enjoyed your work very much.
Thank you. Well, hopefully we'll get you maybe for two things next season, a presentation of your work in some
Yeah,
way or another, and
yeah.
maybe certainly another critique.
Definitely. Appreciate it so much. And Nancy and Mary, again, thank you. And Scott, thank you for organizing this and everybody for attending. And I hope to see you down the road. And if anybody is interested in the hummingbirds, jump on the newsletter right away. I have a webinar this Sunday where I'm going to go over everything that we do at our workshops. You can get informed before we release the option to register. But then if you do want to register, jump in quick because it's in pretty high demand. But anyway, on that note, have a wonderful evening and I will hopefully see you soon. And thanks again, everyone.